Dumb, cool,
weird
podcast. Welcome to the podcast. This is the Dumb, Cool, Weird podcast with Wes and Nick.
Yep.
Glad to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I always like to have really interesting guests on here. We thought you were very cool.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, before we get started, why don't you talk about yourself? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am born in Chicagoan.
Oh,
I
nice.
am. I started off being a theater major in college.
Okay.
Ended up being in ministry, and not exclusive of either. I have been doing a number of different things, including counseling, including production, including speaking. Did I say that already? Writing, everything from books to scripts to poetry.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
I've been doing a little directing, a little producing. And I mainly am focusing on when I do workshops, I'm either doing something in the DEI space, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or I'm doing something that's a spiritual workshop, or I'm doing something to support people in their creativity.
Oh.
So that's kind of in a nutshell, the kind of stuff that I do.
Yeah, it sounds like you stay pretty busy.
Yep.
I do. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a local Atlanta filmmaker. I direct marketing videos for a living, and I also I've worked in the film industry here for many, many years. I like 8+ years. I've been on a lot of Netflix shows. I've done a lot of different things. I work with Tyler Perry. I've done so many different things over the years. I took a easier job directing marketing videos for a company, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And me and him started this podcast about 7 months ago, and been working on a couple films I'm trying to get made. Trying to find funding is always fun, but
Patreon.
Right.
yeah. And then he's an ex-military guy. He was in the Marines.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, now graduating college, finally.
Yeah. So
Took me like 8 years?
yeah. So
It's all about sticking to it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a podcast too. It's called Mystic Magic.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, we'll check it out. I
Definitely.
always I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm riding in my car. I like audio podcasts.
Yeah.
So. Are you on all major platforms?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Cool.
Very nice.
Very cool. Well, Nick, I know you had a question for her.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it? It said you had a master's degree in consciousness.
Consciousness studies. Yes, sir.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I had to fulfill 6 areas. One is science and spirituality. One is theology. One is leadership. One is philosophy.
Okay.
One is psychology. And let's see, I always forget one. Now, which one did I forget?
It's all right.
Anyway, that gives you the broad stroke, and all of those things obviously have to do with consciousness.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, understanding the human mind is a combination of a lot of different sciences, so I understand.
Well,
yeah.
And, just looking at that, seeing master's degree in consciousness, you're just kind of looking at it like, oh, what does this mean necessarily?
Yeah, he was just curious about that.
Yeah.
But consciousness is what we are aware of, and there's a lot of different aspects of life that contribute to that. Obviously, psychology, obviously, philosophy, obviously, theology, and leadership is also determined based on how you are programmed. How you think. What is your style? In terms of communicating with people. So all of that is how we show up, consciously or unconsciously, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just very informative because, like I said, you kind of look at one of the like that without knowing anything about it. You're just kind of like, what does this even mean?
Right.
Yeah.
But
That's
it's
always
pretty
a
cool.
question people have when I go into more what do you call formal settings.
Yeah.
You know, people that are used to, this is business period, this is finance period. What is a consciousness study person? What is that?
Yeah.
Right? But it's always intriguing. Usually it's like, ooh, that sounds interesting, right?
Oh yeah. Definitely.
That is very interesting. So with you, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on today is because we saw that you kind of, like I said, I saw that you do therapy with people sometimes.
I do counseling.
Yeah. And we kind of like to talk about mental health on this podcast a good bit, and we just kind of wanted to dive a little bit onto like your approach to, counseling and stuff with people. And do you usually do
Okay.
groups or do you do one-on-one?
I do one-on-one. I also do couples.
Okay.
Um, the group thing, I guess I fulfill that when I'm teaching, when I'm doing workshops. That's where the group consciousness comes in.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
that interplay. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I actually grew up Catholic myself, and I think
Mhm.
Nick, you grew up like
Orthodox Christian.
Yeah, Orthodox Christian. Yeah.
Okay, I grew up Catholic too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not religious at all. So I don't know. I think you're still religious, aren't you?
Yeah, somewhat.
Somewhat, yeah. So
You know.
Well, people like to make that distinction between being spiritual and being religious.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a blend of both because I use everything.
Okay. Could you go into what the difference is? Because you know what, I've actually never asked that question before, and got an answer,
Oh.
or even had answers to it before.
Religions have a tendency to try to construct how one should live according to certain mores, according to certain laws, according to certain backgrounds. And so if you have someone who's a Christian and they are Bible focused, a lot of people who are in that mindset don't understand that there's many ways in order to understand the Bible, which is, language, which is like exaggeration, which is like what you call oh gosh, I really should have had something to eat before I came.
It's all good.
But
It's all good.
there's a way to know that you have to consider culture. A simile was the word I was looking for.
Gotcha.
You have to know, that there are purposes for stories.
Mm.
And so, when we were taught in ministerial training, there's a Hebrew Bible and then there's a Christian Bible, and most people know them as the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
And Judaism has their mores, their guidelines. Hinduism has their mores, their guidelines. They have an attachment to tradition, which doesn't always translate into today's living because cultures, languages change. And when a language starts off in Greek or it starts off in Latin, there are many translations that get lost in the process. And so the essence gets lost. Whereas with spirituality, it's more of an inside job. It's more of a connection to that source. Now you can use religion to get to it, or you can use spiritual practice to get to it. People meditate, people pray. You can use any kind of methodology to get in touch with your spirit.
Okay.
But spirituality does not require religion. A lot of times people get caught up in religiosity and they lose a sense of being connected to their spirit.
All right. See, that makes a lot more sense now.
Sounds like my dad.
Yeah.
My dad doesn't really go to church or anything, but he believes and God and all that, but he doesn't like put that at the forefront of like following the scripture to like
Yeah.
a crazy degree.
So I guess I would actually be in the same category then.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, if you really took things literally, then you would not wear a blended material because that was against the law.
Yeah.
You can't wear two different fabrics, right?
Yeah.
And so, you have to understand that some things are not in stone, but according to that culture in that region at that time.
So what you're saying is it's basically ancient primitive humans trying to understand the world, and we have a better understanding of the world now, is what you're saying. But the spirituality is still there.
We have a different one.
Yeah.
We don't know yet if it's better. I guess, depending on how things fall out, we'll see.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, things can change greatly in the next couple hundred years. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you think about it. So what were you
Things changed greatly in 2 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's very true.
Things changed pretty quickly in a few months.
Yeah, these days. You're right.
Yeah.
Technology makes things go faster. So I get that.
In a day, you
And
can have...
pandemics do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, were you how did you survive the pandemic? Were you confined to your house a good bit?
Prayerfully, I was very careful. I was not shy about getting vaccines. I was not shy about, getting tests.
Yeah.
And like sometimes, like I still do acting from time to time. Sometimes I have to be tested before I go on set.
That makes sense.
And so, and then when I would go into certain environments, it would be required. So I never really fought against it. I just figured I better get the odds in my favor if I want to get through this thing alive.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's good. I mean, I know that my dad had a very different perspective than that. I went and got the vaccine myself, and I actually got a booster shot too. My dad's one of those people. He's very stubborn. He didn't want to get the vaccine, but my dad also practices social distancing, like even before the pandemic happened. My dad really,
Social distancing before it was cool.
yeah, he loves staying away from people as much as he can. So
So
he definitely practices that a good bit.
honestly, when they said, "Yeah, just stay away from people," I was at home. I was like, "Fine, already. I already do that.
I already do
This
that.
is okay." I was like, go outside, exercise. You're like, you mean what I should be doing and washing my hands too? What's next? Basic human things.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
it's
It can be a little isolating when you don't connect with people that you want to connect with, though.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember during the halfway through the pandemic in 2020, I was kind of sitting at work, and I was mainly the only person there at the office, and I kind of was just sitting there looking at my computer, and I kind of leaned back, and I was like, man, I kind of miss people.
Yeah. I had a Skype date with my friends.
What were you say?
Sorry.
Oh yeah, we would do like birthday parties on Zoom and all that, and I would give talks in churches on Zoom, and ad infinitum meetings, of course. It's not the same as a full body experience.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
it's very true. Yeah, the girl I was dating, we're like sort of still dating, but not really. It's kind of like up in the air right now. Complicated. She's a big church goer. I know she goes like every Sunday. She actually sings at her church, and she works at like some. I think the church she's at is like this evangelical church.
Like a mega church?
Not like a mega church. I mean, evangelical doesn't necessarily mean mega church. It's just
It's
like
usually connected.
yeah.
They like to enroll more people in their teaching.
Yeah. And they're definitely a church where they are recorded. So I do know that. And I think they broadcast it or something like that.
Something of that nature.
Yeah. So but I know she does that, but she's got very different beliefs than me and him and probably even you. I don't know, like the biggest thing with her is she says she believes in science, but then whenever I like start digging a little bit, she gets kind of mad at me when we start talking about scientific stuff, and I kind of just let that bridge burn and I just don't talk to her about stuff like that anymore
Yeah.
because it's kind of hard.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that there's a connection between science and spirituality.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it's they got caught up in that Newtonian way of thinking. I'm more of a quantum thinker.
yeah.
You know.
Well, she could probably learn a lot from you.
Yeah,
You know?
definitely.
So, I mean, she just, I explained to her that all like life on the planet is related to each other, and she did not
Yes.
like that at all. I told her that we share a common ancestor with rodents because she had some rats, and we share a common ancestor with those creatures, and she goes, I don't like that, and I'm like, what are you talking about? That's beautiful. I like that. I like that we share a common ancestor with them. I told her we share a common ancestry with trees too, but that doesn't mean that trees are bad.
Yeah, I'm still pretty happy.
It's just interesting that we've been taught separation.
Yeah, from nature.
There's but there's like little puny wading birds that perch in crocodiles' mouths, and they actually eat from the crocodile's teeth, and the crocodile lets them because he needs his teeth clean.
Yeah.
There are a lot of interspecies, relationships that are beneficial, mutually beneficial.
Yeah, it makes me think of those sharks that have the little tiny fish that ride the side of their stomachs, and they eat the barnacles and stuff off the side of their stomachs.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah, stuff like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. It's like I like how we have a common ancestry with apes too.
Yeah, I don't know how she feels about that. I've never actually talked to her about that. But I don't know.
I mean, it's hard to kind of like dismiss it because when you see a hairless ape, like that looks like a less developed human.
Yeah.
But also an overly developed human when you look at the physical features of an ape.
Yeah, that's true.
Things are crazy. Those things are crazy to look at, man.
Yeah. I mean, anthropology is a very fun field to study. What's up?
Yes, one source created everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I dig it.
Yeah.
I mean,
If we had that mindset, we might be a lot more at peace, knowing our connectedness.
Honestly, I think if people accepted that stuff more, I think we'd be a better society too.
Yes.
When I grew up, I grew up around a bunch of people being very racist about certain groups of people. And one of the things that made me not think like that anymore was when I got into middle school. I learned about evolution, and I learned how if I go back far enough in my evolutionary tree, I actually share a common ancestry with black people from Africa. And when I learned that, it kind of gave me a whole new perspective on everything. Because like I said, growing up, I grew up in a town where a lot of people were racist, and all I heard was Hispanic people are like this, black people are like this, Asian people are like this. But then after being exposed to what science says about human beings, it made me realize how can I hate my brother or my cousin or my my ancestor? That's so fucking whack.
Right.
Well, to be fair, a lot of people, if you ever talk to people who have that mindset, a racist mindset, they are dumber than most people. It's like they score lower on an IQ. Like they could,
they've been
because they're closed off from anything that can conflict them.
Their descendants of a black woman have been found on every continent except Antarctica.
I believe that.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think they say all modern humans come from Ethiopia originally. I think is where they come from. Like that general area.
Definitely Africa for sure. I know. Yeah.
Center or south, I think it was.
Something like that. And the reason why humans distributed is because our ancestors, when they were living in Africa, they basically migrated all over the world.
Right.
And they think that there was probably they think there was at least 4 or 5 different waves of migration. Like there was 1, and then 2, and then 3. But after those humans stayed in those certain parts of the world for periods of time, their features changed because they adapted to the environment they lived in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they think white people are the way they are because they lived in an environment that didn't have a whole lot of sunlight.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So,
yeah.
And Africa is a very hot, arid place where there's a lot of sunlight hitting all the time. I mean, it used to be a jungle a long time ago, but the jungle's pretty much like
Well, it's kind of like when you look at
over time.
places in the Middle East. They used to have like lush green areas and wild and some pretty cool wildlife. You were talking like tigers and lions. Like when you hear these stories about people in the Middle East like going on these lion hunts for fun, you're just like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And now it's just been
it's a desert.
It's been destroyed a little bit from changes in the environment.
And man's interference,
Yeah.
Really, man's interference has caused ecological problems. And I believe the guy who predicted that the next pandemic would start in Wuhan, who was a microbiologist, basically saying that the combination of pollution and pesticides created a microbe that was trying to adapt in order to live. And that was the virus that led to coronavirus.
Yeah, I heard that. And I've also heard about how what's really going on with like the climate changing a good bit is layers of ice are melting. And we have no idea what kind of microbes are living under those layers of ice. That kind of scares me a little bit too, because one of those microbes could mutate and just completely wipe us out,
Right. And we just act careless, like we don't have to be responsible for our actions, and that what we want is all that's important, and we don't even know that we're killing ourselves.
Well, if plague doesn't kill us, they also predict that the way we're going, we're going to have climate refugees, and then because people's environments are going to be destroyed by glacial ice that floods their homelands, or you're going to have situations like you're going to have wars for resources.
Yes.
Yeah, and one of the things
that's already happening. That's what's happening in Ukraine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much, they want the resources.
They have a great percentage of the world's resources, and that's what Mr. Putin is after.
I believe that.
Well, I mean, yeah, he can't go back now. He's already started. He's already screwed up. So he's gonna have to keep going forward, because if not, he's going to be, he's already a war criminal at this point, technically. So if he doesn't keep going, he's definitely going to end up like Saddam.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fear gets us in trouble.
Yeah, and me and him did a little bit of research, and we found out that by 2050, the world population will be at an unsustainable rate. Like apparently, according to most like climate scientists and just people who study populations, they say that the Earth can only sustain like 10 billion people with like the amount of resources that are on Earth. And once we reach 10 billion, we'll basically be like at a critical point. And me and him did some research, and we found out that 2050 is when the Earth will be at its tipping point for the amount of people that are on it.
And already, we got to worry about the fact that if we get to 2 degrees Celsius or higher, we're kind of screwed as it is anyways. And I think it's like we're sitting at like 1.5 or 1 right now. Yeah. So if it keeps going, there's going to be a point of no return. Like a lot of places on this planet already are at the point of no return. So that's why they're going to be technically classified as your first climate refugees. And then if that gets out of hand, we're already having trouble sustaining the populations we have currently in the West. It's like if we're taking people from what is considered the global South, because we're what's called the global North. If we take people from the global South consistently, then we're putting more of a drain on resources now. If we help them out now, there's a possibility that if we turn their lives around, everything could sort of bounce back and balance out.
I can see that.
Well, we've been so greedy in terms of trying to exploit things. There are already climate refugees now. That's already happening with people who are refugees. It's not just war, but when you deplete the resources, there's places where they can't grow food anymore.
Yeah, Kenya's got conflicts. Bangladesh is already experiencing major flooding. They say that's not going to be a country in the near future, and India's already walled off the country of Bangladesh so that they can't illegally migrate into the country. So it's
a sad situation, and we don't seem to think that we're responsible and that we need to make behavior modifications. That's the problem. You know, we can turn it around, but we have to be willing to do so.
Well, luckily, I have some friends that work in a really good field. They're working in the field of nuclear fusion, and they think if they can figure out how to create a nuclear fusion reactor that's stable and works well, it could solve problems that will make the left and the right-leaning people happy, so they can meet them somewhere in the middle, basically, because
Yeah.
it would be clean
Okay.
energy that doesn't contribute to greenhouse gases, but then it produces enough energy to where we can replace, gas,
Your-
petroleum,
Gets rid of your fossil fuel
gets
needs.
rid of fossil fuel needs, basically. So
Yeah. Because you can't keep plummeting the earth and expect it to stay the same.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, nature was healing pretty well. It's like a lot of people want to think of it as like, I mean, what happened with the pandemic, a lot of people dying and everything, people were like sad, and rightfully so, because they're losing family members. But when
Yeah.
people stopped interacting and damaging the environment, it cleared up in a lot of places. Like, I've been to Venice, and the water in the canals, it's like you couldn't see through it. It was just so dark and murky that you wouldn't imagine anything would live in there. And because people stopped, I mean, when life stopped, the water cleared up, and you started seeing dolphins go back into those canals.
Yeah. And the water levels are rising
Yes.
like
Yep.
crazy.
Yeah, I read somewhere that if all the glaciers on the planet melted tomorrow, where we live here in Atlanta, you could actually see the ocean.
Dang.
Yeah, I mean it wouldn't be in Atlanta, but you could see it. Like you could see.
You could see you could see where it's at.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, Leon could be a coastal city.
Yes, Atlanta would be a coastal city if all the glaciers melted.
You know what? We don't need Florida. Just get rid of it.
Most of Florida would be gone if all the glaciers melted.
Maybe there's
Yeah.
maybe there's parts we won't miss.
And you would be
Yeah.
fine. You would be perfectly fine up there in Chicago, though.
I often wondered how Mr. Trump would feel if all of a sudden Mar-a-Lago was underwater.
I'd probably relocate.
Probably would. You probably would.
I mean, the safest place at that point, if it's gonna keep getting bad, we can always go to Colorado,
Yeah, Colorado's a good place.
hang out in the Rockies, maybe.
Me and him were watching that movie 2012. Yeah,
It was so bad.
It's such a bad movie, but it was like it didn't really make any sense to us because they had like water that was like coming all the way up into the mountains, and we're like, there's not enough water on the earth to like go up there like that. Made no sense.
Well, it was another one of those Hollywood movies.
I know.
That they were playing on a possible Aztec. Was it the Mayan calendar? Being right and all of us dying.
Yeah.
They were really just hoping like, hey, if this movie shits the bed, the world's gonna end.
Pretty much.
We're not doing an awful lot to keep it going.
No.
No, we're not.
We seem to be more interested in going to other planets.
Yes.
At this point, I think this might be a good idea. This one's ruined. Let's ruin another one. Adapt and
that's
ruin it.
But the
sarcastic part of me thought that too.
Well, the thing is, like, if we went to Mars, I just don't think. I mean, Mars is a very inhospitable place right now. Like,
We'd live underground.
yeah, we'd
is what they're
have
saying.
to live underground. But then, if you're born on Mars, you could actually never come back to the Earth because of the way the gravity is there.
Your body wouldn't be able to adapt.
Yeah, you would die pretty quickly.
But just imagine, you'd probably see broadcasts on Mars, be like, man, I'm so glad I don't live on Earth. They can't breathe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I like to be kind of optimistic about maybe we'll get our stuff together. One of the things is it's generationally speaking. I have a lot of I think the younger generation, like my nephew generation, I think they're a good group of kids.
They might save us.
Yeah, I think they're a good group of kids. They call them Generation Alpha is what they call them. So they're like a really good group of kids.
They'll have eyesight problems with all the video games that they play, but at least they'll be doing big brain stuff, right?
Well, I heard that they're not so much interested in I heard a lot of them are not so much interested in, like, even at the young age they are right now, they're not as much interested in like stuff we're interested in, like trying to be like a big media star. They're more interested in like practical things.
Okay, that's good then.
So that's at least that's what I've heard from a couple of different parents of these kids. So
I hope those parents aren't lying.
I think they're interested in developing their creativity too.
yes.
Yeah.
And then there's a generation under us, Generation Z. They're
assholes.
Yeah, they're definitely out there. I know. The girl I dated, she was a Generation Z, so they're very different. We're millennials, by the way. So.
Okay.
We're those dirty millennials who complain too much and
people make fun of us. And
don't work hard enough.
They say we're too whiny. So
got 2 jobs and still lazy.
Yep. Yeah, what generation are you from?
I am a baby boomer.
Okay. So you're the same age as my dad.
Yeah.
My dad's a baby boomer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So you saw a lot of changes then.
Oh yeah. And it looked like progress until we just got crazy and just didn't really remember our values and principles.
Yeah.
You just can't go. I mean, I think people who are baby boomers remember the senseless wars like Vietnam and really did not want to go down that path.
Yeah.
There's a lot of choices that the government's made that we didn't agree with, and there's too much at stake when you just go into war haphazardly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad graduated high school in 1979, so he told me all about that stuff. So, like the whole Vietnam thing, because he remembers it pretty vividly.
Yeah.
Because my uncle went to Vietnam.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my dad doesn't really remember the civil rights movement very much, but I think my uncle does. So,
Yeah.
my grandfather definitely did. So my grandfather.
Yeah, I was 11 when Dr. King was killed.
Oh.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Must have been pretty impactful then.
It was. It was. It was an explosive time.
Well, it's funny you say that because I was 11 years old when I saw the Twin Towers collapse.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I guess you could say that was my event when I was 11 years old.
I was 7 or 8.
Yeah. I was, honestly, the way I think about how it makes me feel now is it scared the hell out of me because I grew up thinking that America, we were this very safe, protected place, and I didn't think anybody could ever hurt us. And I don't know, it just changed my perspective that we're not safe in this country,
You know what? I guess it just didn't register with me as much because I had just moved here recently from Canada, and so it's still just trying to understand the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, it was pretty jarring for me because I had canceled a trip to New York that weekend, and I was scheduled to be on the plane down in Pennsylvania.
Oh my God.
Oh wow.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was life altering.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I went to school that day, and the entire halls were just deserted, and I was wondering what was going on. And I went into the room, and I'd never seen anybody so quiet before. Everybody was huddled around the TV. There was no sound from anybody. We just sat there and looked at it, and we didn't say anything.
I think it was with my class. We had done the whole tornado drill basically because everyone was freaking out and they didn't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at that point, I saw a lot of humanity when the World Trade Building was coming down. You couldn't tell what race anybody was. There was just people helping people, and there were a lot of rescue efforts and a lot of sacrifices made. And sometimes, those reality checks help us to remember what's important. And we can galvanize in crisis, just like we did with the tornadoes and the and the whole thing that happened in New Orleans, we have good sense when there's a crisis, but the rest of the time we don't really take responsibility for our actions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, shoot. My wife was in New York at that time because my wife is from New York, and my father-in-law was a police officer, and they actually didn't know if he was all right or not because he was helping out with the relief efforts during that time. He didn't like communicate with anyone for like days.
Wow.
Because of how busy they were.
That's insane.
Yeah, everybody was needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were praying. That's what we knew to do. We were praying the whole time. My minister was Michael Beckwith. I think you've probably seen him on TV before. So he was, his directive was pray without ceasing. So I did that for a couple of days, and then I just started crying and couldn't stop crying for a while.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that was a moment in history where America was pretty together on that one. I mean, I've never seen so much like compassion and love with like Americans being together to, because that's, that affected everybody. I don't know if you've ever seen those famous photos from the Twin Towers. They have one where the guy's like falling out of the building, and he's literally upside down, and he's got his leg against his other leg. It's a really famous photo. Yeah. But it shows him like taking the plunge down to the ground.
So you didn't have very many options.
Yeah.
It's
really.
Yeah.
Really messed up series of events.
But like you said, there were people that were helping each other down. There were people who were, supporting each other. It's not one of those moments when you want to just, leave here and this every man for himself. It's like you can't help but want to be a beneficial presence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was like I said, it kind of changed how I saw the world forever after that.
Yeah. I mean, and after that, we had like, it's kind of crazy, like how many guys that I met before I enlisted who were Iraq war vets and guys who served at the beginning of Afghanistan. Like those were people who were affected by that moment in history as well.
Yeah. I was hoping that we would not be reactive, but I guess they felt there was no choice but to. It took us 20 years to get out of that war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's usually how it rolls.
But we were doing healing forums at Agape. We were, because people were messed up psychologically, emotionally. And we just had to support each other through, getting to some sense of normalcy.
So I got to ask, what's it like living in Chicago?
Chicago, well, I was born here, and, there's all kinds of wonderful things that happen in Chicago. A lot of times people like to focus on the crime.
Yeah.
And, even with that.
Every city has crime.
Yeah. When I try to do my part, I go in neighborhoods and try to help heal people. And, we pray on street corners, or we do whatever we need to do to get people to, consider another way. But there's a lot of industry here. There's a lot of business here. There's a lot of people here, and when something happens on a global scale, Chicago is just as prominent. Like after George Floyd, we were just as prominent. There were marches and everything going on. There was all kinds of, people talk about, the destruction, but there was a lot of constructive activity that was going on too. Okay. Chicago's always had interesting politics. That's really why they call it the Windy City. People think it's about the weather. It's a beautiful city. In the summertime, it's bitter in the winter. It is, but we've learned what to do and how to cope and how to pick up a shovel and you know, how to help our neighbors out when they're stuck. And, Chicago is comprised of 77 communities. And a lot of times we know how to leave our community to go help another one. So
Interesting.
don't believe all
All
the
right.
hype that you see. There's usually strong leadership. And we've usually had one party who's been the mayor, and we've usually had all kinds of outreach, whether it's in the educational level or political level or cultural level. There's all kinds of activity happening here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
I've only been to Chicago once in my life, and that's when I was a very young kid. We were like changing planes and going to
I was in Chicago for
Las
a week.
Vegas. I was very small. I was like 5.
Yeah, I was in Chicago for a few days for my brother's travel hockey game, and I think that was
Well,
in February too, and it was pretty cold.
you have to come in the summertime because there's a festival every weekend in the summertime. Because
Oh.
we know, if we're going to be in the winter time, we have a great time in the summertime, and it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I got some friends out in Chicago that I served with, so I wouldn't mind going. They just give me an excuse to go and see them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a buddy. He lived up there for a little while, and he said it was interesting. He said it was like way bigger than Atlanta. We live
Yeah.
in Atlanta. Atlanta's a pretty decent sized city, and we got a lot of crime down here ourselves too. But Atlanta's a cool city. We got a lot of history down here because we're old.
Well, yeah. For the longest, we were the second city. Los Angeles took over that basically just because Los Angeles is so sprawling. I lived there for 30 years, so I know,
Oh wow.
it's like more about land than it is about, what people are actually there,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
My family like dates back to like hundreds and hundreds of years here in Georgia, which is pretty cool.
Mm,
Being that Georgia is one of the first colonies in the United States, like I said, there's a lot of
Original 13.
original 13. It's a lot of history here,
right.
and I mean, me and Nick can literally walk over here downtown, and we can see parts of Atlanta where, that existed like back during the 1700s. Like there's landmarks and stuff. You can find
Yeah.
them, which is pretty cool. So,
Well, I think that's why there's so much political turmoil around Georgia, and so much is depending on the history of Georgia, and people that don't want to let go of that history
yeah.
are even trying to stop people from voting. So uh, it gets a little bit desperate, trying to hold on to history, and it's not a good thing when it comes to really what the ideals of the country are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's bigger than what some people see.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it's
Those
so.
are my values.
I mean, I guess it's so different because it's like there's a lot of things that, a lot of Southern things, I guess you could say. They're still like, even though I've lived in the South my whole life, it still it strikes me as weird, I guess, being from Canada and everything.
Yeah, he's from Canada.
Right. What part of Canada?
Montreal.
Okay.
But yeah,
Montreal's cool.
it's a pretty fun party city, I would say. But yeah, it's like I don't know. There's just there's certain aspects of the South that I just kind of get confused about. It's like I've noticed. I guess I've noticed this my whole life. Is like one thing is like the Civil War. Like everybody's still divided about the
Right.
Confederacy and the Union, and I'm just like that like happened in the past. Like, can you let it go? In terms of
They can't.
well, and that's the thing is like I'm over here and I'm just kind of like it's so strange. It's strange to me because it's like there's other conflicts that my family was a part of, and I've realized, I guess, it's like it's also the same with them because I'm an outsider. I don't see it on the same level as they do.
I mean, I could take you up to some
you get-
places up in North Georgia where the people hang Confederate flags everywhere. you know?
Well, I mean, it's like because my family immigrated from Greece and Italy. You know, I mean, my grandfather really hated communists, and he really hated Turkey. He hated Turkish people, and it was, well, I wouldn't say he grew out of that actually, but it was like there was still that old like Greek mindset of not trusting Turkish people.
Right.
But they would
And
all.
I experienced that in Europe where there were people who would, against Turkish people. But up in Canada, you got that English versus French thing going on too, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's that's like such a weird thing though, because in the 70s they had terrorist attacks related to that with the with the Quebecois. They were like
Mm-hmm.
they were going around and threatening they. I mean, I think they said there was like a terrorist attack out there, and they had to call in the army to handle it. So it's so strange, but I mean that's like another one of those conflicts, that just kind of sits there. It sits there in the past, and people still gravitate towards it.
Mm.
It's really sad.
Well, I mean, it's like I would say though, it's like going back to my grandfather and everything. Moving to Canada, like changes your perspectives on a lot of things. Because my grandparents didn't live in a Greek neighborhood; they lived in a Trinidadian and Jamaican neighborhood, and that's where my dad grew up. So it's like your whole idea, your whole notions of community are different.
Sure. And those were former enslaved people that came from uh, the Caribbean
Yeah,
and through the United States. Yeah.
Yeah, they were working. They were doing sugar plantations. I
sugar
think.
plantations in Haiti were very big. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Jamaica though, when the slaves rebelled, it was actually like a safe haven for a while there for a lot of the other islands because no one was gonna mess with Jamaica.
Right.
Was there any Native Americans on in Jamaica?
Jamaica's whole like native population was wiped out.
Makes
So
me,
that was
makes
like,
me sick, dude.
well, I mean, it's like with anything, unfortunately, like their native what would be considered their native population is completely wiped out. So what is considered native to Jamaica now is former African slaves and their ancestors.
Yeah, I feel, man, out of all the people that have suffered the most here, I feel bad for Native Americans so much, man. Like
Yeah.
their entire fucking culture was just destroyed, and then there's only like a handful of them left in the United States. It's like so messed up.
Yeah. And then we're finding a lot of burial grounds up in Canada,
Yeah,
where all of these kids were in schools that they were taken out from their homes in the states and just kind of doled out to wherever they wanted to just intentionally decimate their culture.
Canada is also very interesting because there's a infamous orphanage system out there that took kids from pretty much all the north from Ireland, Scotland, I think it was as well, and they would send these kids off to be a labor force on farms, and a lot of this isn't a lot of these kids aren't documented, so they are finding a lot of remains of dead children as well
Right.
in that area, and it's actually interesting because there's a lot of people now who are coming out that were part of that system.
Hmm.
They were talking about that come out and they talk about like the horrors of like what they witnessed and what they had to do to survive.
Well, I know that there's also a lot of Native people who are participating in a lot of healing around that.
Hmm.
And so you have to, because you have to acknowledge that, these were lives and they need to be honored.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was, my grandmother, she was from Ireland. She moved here back in 1930, I want to say 34, and she moved to New York. She was a very young child, but she said she remembers getting off the boat in New York and being Irish. There was a bunch of Italian guys who were just waiting for them to get off the boat. And as soon as they got off the boat, they were throwing rotten fruit at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Irish
were not treated well.
Yeah, they were not. She said the trip from off the boat to where they were moving to was very rough. Like people just automatically knew they were Irish, like just by the way they dressed
Mm-hmm.
and everything, and it was rough. She told me about that, and that's like that's two groups of white people treating each other like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah.
I mean, if
And
you,
they did a lot of the sharecropping in the South too.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Irish were also indentured servants in the Caribbean, and they would die quite
Yeah,
frequently.
yeah,
Good
yeah.
Lord.
And so they were one step above here, but they were still placed as workers,
Mm.
until they had, black labor and Chinese labor, and you know, um, so it was a lot of oppression,
Hmm.
and then we're still dealing with the ramifications of that today.
Yeah, I know that most of the railroads were built by Asian people here in the United States.
Yes,
Specifically the Chinese.
Yeah, the Chinese. Yeah.
And you got the
yes,
Chinese Exclusion Act.
Yep. And then let's not even talk about the Japanese internment camps during the World War
right,
II.
Yeah,
right,
Roosevelt's an
right.
asshole.
Yeah, these people are Americans and they're putting people
Well,
in camps. It's fucked up.
I mean,
Right. And
I mean,
then drop a bomb in Hiroshima and decimate generations, and you know um there's that effect that we have when we do these war crimes,
Hmm.
uh live for generations. We have to keep doing the healing work to try to get past it, but it's not something that you can just brush off.
Sometimes I think about the men that were flying in the plane that had to drop that bomb on them. I wonder how
Mm.
I don't know. I wonder how they felt.
well, the thing about it was when they were bombing Japan before that, they were firebombing about 50 to 90% of their cities into destruction,
Mm.
and they still weren't giving up. And the like they also calculated that if they did a mainland invasion of Japan, that they could have lost more lives.
Mm.
So it makes you wonder, because it's like a battle of like Okinawa.
Mm.
All the Japanese troops died,
Mm.
and then the locals committed suicide because they feared the Americans,
Mm.
because the Japanese had also put out propaganda saying that they would be raped and eaten.
Mm.
So it's at the end of the day, I'll also just I think about a lot of the inhuman things that the Japanese did
Mm.
with their biological warfare on the Chinese, because there's an infamous camp where they tested bioweapons on Chinese citizens, and they have no survivors from that camp. They also weren't tried for their war crimes. They were just given jobs in the U.S.
I always say if aliens ever came to Earth and
They'd be done with us.
got a little snippet of our history, they'd probably be like, "Whoa."
Y'all just kill each other.
Yeah, they probably.
Or use each other for experiments. They did that with black people for
Mm.
years, and a lot of people's lives are still being saved because of them taking the cells from Henrietta Lacks,
Mm.
who saved
Yep.
thousands and thousands of lives. The liberties that people take on each other are inhumane, and we just have to do better. We
Yeah.
have to.
I call it common human decency.
Oh, we didn't even get
And I always,
that.
and every time I see it, I always call it out if I do see it.
Yeah.
I don't really see it as much these days because I think people are trying to do better these days. But yeah, anytime I see it, I try to call it out. So
It's definitely gonna get. I think it's gonna get better.
Well, we gotta work towards it. That's the only way. You
absolutely.
know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. We got
Top of
five.
the
Yeah,
hour?
we got 5 minutes left.
Oh, wow.
Is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I want to plug an event that I am organizing called Celebrating Our Soul, a New Thought conference by people of African descent.
Okay.
It's happening down in Lee Summit, Missouri,
Okay.
and it's a lot of great speakers and a lot of great activities going on, all kind of workshops, all kind of great music, musicians coming from all over the country, ministers coming from all over the country, participants coming from all over the country. And so we're going to have a good time partying. We're going to be actually taking that move from Africa all the way up to present day times and celebrating through the music and through the talk. And a lot of education going on and a lot of spiritual renewal, some energy work, a lot of fun stuff. They can go to www.padntg.org for more information.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll throw your information down in the description so they can hit that up as well.
Absolutely.
But we appreciate you talking with us today, and this has been a really good talk. It's better than the last podcast we just recorded. The guy the guy we were interviewing, we were talking to, he was really hard to talk to. Let's put it that way.
Oh.
This one was like way better.
It's easier to talk with intelligent people because you can always learn something and you can exchange ideas from a place that is, more informed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I believe that.
Yeah.
Well, check out our website, www.dumbcoolweird.com. Check out our merch. Check out our YouTube channel and be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Even if you don't like us, go ahead and dislike us too. We appreciate it.
Come on the podcast if you don't like us.
Yeah, come on the podcast. We'll talk about it.
We'll compromise.
We're also on 40 different plus platforms for the audio-only podcast, where we have our regular episodes and our micro podcast episodes. And, try to stay in tune with what we're doing. We're trying to do great things. We just had our first viral video on YouTube recently, so we're growing.
Pretty disgusting.
Yeah. So you want to go ahead and sign us off, Nick?
Stay sexy, Atlanta.
Thanks for checking out the Dumb Cool Weird podcast. Go to our website, www.dumbcoolweird.com, to check out our merch and all our social media links. If you want to check out how to support us and our audio podcasts only and an access to our website and all of our other links for our social media, go to linktree.com, which has Dumb Cool Weird podcast. The link is up below. Hope you guys will check us out. We have new content coming out every single Monday. We have new content coming out every single day. Check it for 9 a.m. Clips, reactions, whatever. We got it coming for you. Hope you come out, check it out. Stay sexy, Atlanta, and keep watching our crap.